So how much advance notice did you get?
That was probably, Stevie, December when I got the call.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got the call late December. And I literally remember telling the lady, and now remember, we didn't have cell phones. This was me going and finding a payphone to call Washington. And I told the lady, I said, I want the job, but I have to do the smart thing and I need to call home and ask permission.
Besides that, I'm running out of quarters. Let's make this call. Let's go quick.
So
and that's why you're still married.
I said, I will call you back in a few minutes. I'd been married to my wife for 10 years at the time. Of course, as you know, we got married in the middle of the academy. We were on our second son. So I had at the time, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I called my wife and she's like, this is what we wanted. Yeah. So I called the lady back and said, I've gotten permission. She says, you need to be at the Orlando district office on February, 2 weeks prior to February 17th to start the paperwork, because of course back then everything was a, duplicative, form that you filled out with a pen, and had a lot of paperwork, and you'll start the academy on February 17th.
Nice.
And you went up to Quantico for that?
I went to Quantico on February 16th on a Saturday, flew up from Orlando, and the entire time on the trip, I was like, what am I doing? I have 10 more years that I literally could have been an Orlando cop and retired at 20 years. But this is the path that I'd prayed about and God led me to, and that I felt like I needed to do. So,
I'm surprised.
And again, I go back to the time frame of the police academy, officially becoming a member of the Orlando Police Department in June of '88. And again, I'll go back to Steve can do that math. I didn't quite get 10 years, and I started the DEA Academy in February, but I will tell you that I did retire from the Orlando Police Department with 10 years on the job.
Well, with your hearing, I'm surprised you heard God calling you. Did he have to use a megaphone?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Actually,
Matt Barden calling Matt Barden.
Well,
that and a 2x4, right?
Yeah. No, it was very exciting. But Morgan, you asked earlier, your great experience of, how did you like the first academy? As many guests on your program have told you, the DEA Academy, when I went through, was 16 weeks there at the FBI Academy during the middle of winter. I'd already been through a 16-week academy. I'd been a cop for 10 years. I'd been a DEA task force officer for 3.5, almost 4 years.
And by God, DEA was lucky to have you, weren't they? You show up to class, it's like, my stink don't shit, or my shit don't stink.
Yeah. And, but I got there and it was just kind of like, I'd already done all that, It was a different feeling, and being there for 16 weeks with 2 young boys at home and my wife, it was a strain on me.
Hey, Murph, have you told Matt about your little run-in because you had done it too, like you were a good shot and the instructors couldn't care less?
I probably told him that they start you out the 5-yard line, slow fire we had revolvers back then.
Yep.
And I could put 6 rounds in one hole. Oh, you think you're a smart ass, huh? You get credit for 1 round.
Yeah. I was really, really good with, at the police department, our quals, and we shot a lot. We had an indoor range actually at OPD. And so you could go down there and put pin to primer anytime you wanted. I could, same way with a revolver. I started out as a cop as a revolver, and, I would shoot a 98, 100% every time. I got to, we transitioned to Sig Sauers at the police department, and I would shoot a 96 to 100, 94 to 100. So I was really good with the revolver. I was really good with a semi-automatic as well. But I would I would throw a round or two. Carried 6 hours at the police department. Wasn't a fan of Glocks, and of course, the academy class when I started, DEA and FBI transitioned from SIGs to Glocks, and so I ended up probably second or third. I think second, maybe out of the 50 folks on the academy as far as qualifications. I shot. I was able to shoot for the possible club, and I missed it by one round. I don't know. Did you ever make it, Stevie?
I did. When I went back to become a firearms instructor, I shot it and made it.
Yeah, that was probably one of my biggest heartbreaks of the academy, and what sucked, of course, at the time, right? We shot from the 50-yard line, which who in the world does that? But we did, and I think I threw one round at maybe the 7.5-yard line. It was like, what are you doing?
Jerking that trigger.
It got good, right? I mean, I'm like, I'm going to do this.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And then that one errant round. So, well, let's springboard from here and talk about, because the one case we wanted to talk to you about, it's a very unique one. So it's and by the way, you worked your way back, right? You went to school in North Carolina. You worked some cases involving that other. You ended up back there as an agent, right?
That is correct. And
so there's this one case with, let's call it the case of the concrete body.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to come up with the case of it's not like Keith Morrison, the case of the overnight oats, the curious case of the overnight oats. So how did you get involved in this case? Because when we talk about concrete, we're talking about a lot of concrete involved in this case. So how did you get involved in this thing to begin with?
Well, so like you said, I was able to, I went back from the academy to Orlando, then transferred to Savannah, Georgia. During my time in Savannah, DEA decided they were going to open up what we call a post of duty, a 2-man post of duty in Asheville, North Carolina, which is 30 miles from my wife's hometown, 40 miles from where we met each other at Western Carolina. And it was, at that point in time, never wanted anything more but to get my wife back close to her family that she'd been away from for, at that point in time, probably about 15, 16 years now. And lo and behold, I got selected along with another agent out of Columbia, South Carolina by the name of Walt Thrower. So we opened up this 2-man post of duty. Excuse me. And we were actually housed in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of North Carolina, Asheville Division, in a what used to be their broom closet. And they cleared all the brooms and the mops and everything out of there, and they put 2 pods in there for Walt and I, and that was our office. And but anyways, we built this office, and we came in and became friends and started a task force. Probably 4 or 5 of the best TFOs I've just ever had the privilege of working with. And anyways, as a lot of investigations started, we started getting information from one of Stevie's old groups, the Strike Force out of Atlanta, that they'd picked up some wire communications and things like that about some big cocaine loads coming into Asheville. And we started, looking into it. And the story plays out as such, is that there was a college professor out of Tucson, Arizona, who had a pilot's license. And I guess he decided to supplement his income. He started flying young cartel members out of Tucson to Asheville, North Carolina, to open up a cell in the mountains of North Carolina. And they were bringing in probably 20 to 50 kilos at a time. And so we started getting into this organization and developed a lot of...
Why did they pick that area? Was it because of the lack of a lot of law enforcement? Was it an area where there wasn't any distribution on? So it's like, virgin territory. I mean, why pick that particular area to expand? Because you got to think a cartel guy is going to stick out around a bunch of, rednecks.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. And I would tell you this, and I asked that very question, Morgan. I said, why here? And one, it was Mayberry, right? You just didn't have a lot of law enforcement. You had areas that, I mean, you'd have sheriff's offices and things like that that would have 8, 10 deputies, right? So, I mean, the chance of you getting caught was very, very thin. And, these, again, go back to what we talked about earlier, is that, you get into, multiple kilos, you get into a pretty good drug organization, and they're not out there slinging dope on the streets. They're selling 15, 20, 25 kilos at a time to people that they know and they trust. And so it's a safer business for them. And it was an untapped market as far as the cartels go, that they were just getting into, getting out of the big cities, Atlanta and Charlotte and things like that, and venturing into the smaller areas where they had a lot of people that liked cocaine.
What major highways were you next to in that area? What were they? Were they state or interstates that they were taking advantage of? Because, obviously this involves logistics, transportation. You got to be able to move dope in and out or money in and out.
Yeah, so I-40 runs through Asheville, and then I-26 runs up through lower South Carolina all the way to Asheville. And so you certainly had the interstate nexus through I-40. A lot of great interdiction stops. I know you had, was it Tim Cardwell, many, many moons ago on your podcast, and had the opportunity to meet Tim, although he didn't work in our area. But yeah, on this occasion though, these guys were actually flying it in on a larger Cessna. I can't remember what it was, Citation, and
that's
so
a twin engine, right?
Yeah. So, anyways, got into that, and we did a lot of wiretaps in Asheville. But I don't remember that we were on a wiretap on these guys, and we were working the investigation with our office and Tucson DEA, and so we were keeping tabs on these guys through both locations, and really it came down to kind of as we old cops say, the old-fashioned police work of a lot of surveillance, a lot of planes up in the air. Doug Witten, if you remember him, Steve, from Atlanta, I flew a lot of hours with Doug Witten on these guys when they were in town.
Mm-hmm. So this professor that's doing the flying of this guy initially to begin with, was this one of these Walter White Breaking Bad things where he's like got a problem and he's trying to pay it down, or is he just doing it for the thrill, needs the money? How does a college professor get hooked up with the cartel?
This guy was he was a one of a kind guy, and I think that it was some sort of excitement in his life, and he also was making pretty good money, $1,000 a kilo plus transportation fees, for the cartel. So I mean, that guy would fly from I think it was Mariana Airport outside of Tucson into Asheville, and get his time and his fuel and his hotel room paid for, and $1,000 a kilo. So he was doing it for strictly the money. He had no other ties whatsoever to this cartel. He wasn't a violent guy. He was just not associated with them in any other way, except he loved flying. He had access to a plane and decided that he wanted to get in the drug business.
So how did you first get onto this guy? Through wires or through an informant, or what first led you to this nexus of this professor? So
we got onto the pilot you're asking about. Yeah. So we got onto the pilot through Tucson, right? And they had information on him, and they were flying back and forth. They had an informant out in Tucson, and on one occasion, the pilot was unable to secure a plane. And so he drove, 17 kilos, I think, out in his BMW. And we started pulling surveillance on the hotel that he always stayed at in Asheville. And he actually liked the hotel because they had karaoke at the bar.
We all have our standards, right?
So he does. So, you ever seen the movie Wild Hogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember when they're at the festival and the guy's standing up doing karaoke? You remember that part?
Vaguely.
There's a bald-headed guy doing karaoke, small, short, dumpy guy. That could be the pilot, literally by physical appearance and the karaoke. But anyways, I remember we found his BMW. He had, Arizona license plates. It's pulled in the parking lot, the convertible BMW. And back then, of course, you could go in and talk to, police meant something to people. And we went to the hotel desk clerk and said, is the owner of the BMW in? And they're like, yeah. And here's a key, and he's in room, whatever, 204. And so we went, me and Larry Sproat was my group supervisor, Stevie. And Larry and I went, and we were going to knock and talk the guy, right? Because we were kind of running out of options on what was going on our end in Nashville. And just going to straight go there and try to work our way in and go up and knock on the door. And we realized that the door's cracked, right? Door's open. And the pilot's in there, and he has just gotten out of the shower, and he had a towel wrapped around him, and he was waiting on a lady, and so he had the door cracked. And so not only did we ruin that for him, but we talked to him and sat there and did what at least decent cops do, and we told him that we were on to him and we knew all this stuff that we really didn't. And he was foolish enough to believe us, and he walked outside and turned over 17 kilos to us out of his car. Told us the entire plan, the entire organization. And he also said, by the way, one of the young guys, and he confirmed they were young guys coming across the border that were tied to, I don't remember the cartel at the time. That they were being supplied their dope by a cartel. And he says, but one of the guys, and it goes, I only know him by his name, Chewy, but he's the guy that I mainly deal with. And I still have $32,000 that he left with me that he didn't want the other members of his organization to know about. And he says, I haven't seen him in 2 weeks. And we're like, okay, whatever. But, back then, $32,000 was quite a lot of money. I mean, kilos of cocaine were probably selling in Nashville for, $22,000 or so at a time.
So was he skimming or stealing, or what was he doing? Why didn't he want the other guys to know about the 32 grand?
I think Chewy was stealing money from the group. And so long and short of this, through communications back and forth with Tucson and things like that, I get a call one day from Steve McGuigan out of Tucson, and he says, hey, Tucson PD just got a call, and they've recovered 600 pounds of concrete in a horse trough, a water trough, and there's a footless, handless, headless torso encased in the concrete. And like, well, I can tell you he didn't kill himself, so what does this have to do with us? And they said, well, we're just trying to tie the pieces together. And
you mean, wait a minute, was that a joke, trying to tie the pieces together? How many pieces was this guy in at this point?
It's a very lame joke.
He was in 6 pieces.
So figuratively and literally, you were trying to piece things together.
Yeah. So, it really didn't mean anything to us at the time, but they, Tucson DEA and Tucson PD, they had no idea who the guy was, right? There was no clue. But what they did is they sent us pictures of TPD in the corner chipping this guy out of 600 pounds of concrete. And it was, as you can imagine, it's a gruesome scene. And so they sent us the pictures. And after we made a number of arrests on these guys, Walt and I had very good relationships with the two primary defense attorneys in Asheville. They handled the majority of the federal drug cases, if not, 95% of them. So we had a very good relationship, and they knew what kind of cases that we put together and our investigative style, and that we were, that we did things the right way. And so we very seldom went to trial with these guys, and they just weren't rollovers. These were the two heavy hitters in Western North Carolina. And so what we did is I would take these pictures during these interviews, and I would just, every one of these guys we arrested, when we'd sit down and interview them and proffer them with their attorneys, as we'd get all the information from them about the drug network, I would just simply slide over this manila folder and tell them to open it up. And they'd open it up and start thumbing through these pictures of this body all hacked up. And, they would turn they would hold their hands up and turn their face and go, "Oh my God, why are you showing me this?" Of course, in Spanish and through an interpreter. And like, okay, well, they don't know anything about it. And on this one occasion, this guy we arrested, who was one of the big three out of the organization, is a guy by the name of Juan Prieto. He opened the folder up and he looked and literally started bawling. And I looked at his attorney, Jack Stewart, and I said, "Jack, I'm going to give you a few minutes." He goes, "Yes, please do." And came back in, and Juan says, "We killed him. We killed him."
For the 32 grand or something else?
32 grand, and just the fact that I'm sure there was other money that he was skimming besides.
That's not the only time.
Grand.
Yeah.
And so, and Chewy was running his own loads as well.
Yeah. And just to explain to our listeners here, the reason he gave the defense attorney time with his client is because when you're doing these proffers, if they have to tell you every crime they've committed, or then you can use it against them if you find out later. But you cannot talk about murder, because that's something that does not have a statute of limitations on it. And that takes you to a whole new level. So that was the significance of you giving time with that, with the defendant, with his attorney, before you got into that.
Yeah, exactly. And so Jack called us back in, and they laid out that, the entire episode of how they thought that Chewy was, running his own load, skimming from the organization. And, as we all know from the violence associated with, cartels, when it comes down to them screwing each other over, or, going outside of the rules, they killed him. And what had happened is Chewy had flown back in with the pilot and landed back in Tucson, and they picked him up. Or I'm sorry, they told him they were going to meet him in a neighborhood, and they would pick up the money from him. And fellow by, of course, Juan Prieto, who was telling us, and a guy by the name of Francisco Gonzalez Castro. They met Chewy in this neighborhood, and Juan told us that him and Frankie already had decided they were going to kill him. And Frankie pulled out a silenced .22 pistol and shot him once in the head as they were sitting there talking, and Chewy was opening the trunk to get the money. Shot him in the head, and I'm guessing he held the gun so close to Chewy's head when he shot, it didn't cycle another round. And they, of course, you already put a .22 slug into the guy's head, and he didn't drop to the ground and die right there. And so then he pulls out a .45 Kimber and shoots him a couple more times in the head.
Wow.
So let me stop you here for a second. Let me ask you a question. Were they trying to send a signal? Because you think how many bodies are buried out there, nobody finds them, right? Why did they go to all of this work with all of this concrete to chop him up? Was that to send us? Is that part of their way of sending a message to the other people? It's like, hey, if you screw us over, this is what happens to you. Because otherwise, it would be like, I was just thinking, there's a lot of ways for somebody to disappear without having to go to all of this work.
Yeah. Morgan, you're exactly right. And I think what happened is they had to plan the killing and they had no after action plan. They had absolutely no idea what to do. And then they're looking around. Of course, they got a silenced 22. It jams or it malfunctions. And then Frankie pulls out a 45 and cranks off a couple of rounds. It wakes up the entire neighborhood in the middle of the night. Now they've got a dead person, and they had absolutely no plan whatsoever afterwards.
This sounds like a comedy. You're sitting there, you got three hit guys going, okay, now we're going to shoot him. And then one guy goes, then what do we do next? And the other guy goes, what do you mean, what do we do next? Well, we shoot him. What do we do with him? Oh, shit, hadn't thought about that.
They had no idea, right? So they literally load him up. They go to, I think, I can't remember what, Home Depot, Lowe's, I can't remember what they go and do. And this is Juan telling us. And of course, this is corroborated once we arrest Frankie himself in Tucson a few weeks later. We get the same story that they decide that they're going to chop his feet off, cut his hands off, and cut his head off his body, dispose of his feet in one location, dispose of his hands in another location, and dispose of his head in a third location, so hopefully that the police will never be able to identify the body. And so they start cutting the feet and the hands and the head off, and it becomes pretty graphic. They use a machete. They think that they're just going to, cut his head off with one fell swoop. They go back and forth about who's going to do it. Of course, Juan says that Frankie does it. He takes a machete and he goes to, the body's laying on the bathroom floor of Frankie's house, and Frankie takes the machete, and of course, probably as a lot of things, you close your eyes before you hit the golf ball, and you slice it really bad. Well, he hits the guy like right across here through the collarbone and the clavicle, and all of a sudden, the insides, and they're like, you know what, we need to be done with this idea. So they finally get his head off, and they decide they were going to chop the rest of him up. They just couldn't stomach it. So they decided they were going to go. They get this horse trough, and if you know what I'm talking about, it's kind of a water trough, and it's probably 4 foot deep. And they go and buy a crap load of concrete in the trough, and they start mixing it together.
Nothing says home project like 4 guys who look like they belong to a cartel coming in there. Hey, we need a horse trough and 600 pounds of cement. Well, what are you guys doing this weekend?
Yeah, exactly. So what's funny is, so they start laying the concrete. They put some concrete in. They put Chewy's body in there, and they didn't buy enough concrete. So they get about 300 pounds or so, and it's not Chewy's body's not completely encased in the concrete. So by the time they go and buy more concrete and come back, the first batch is already dried. They pour the second batch. Well, they leave that line in there, right? And so they take, how in the world we even went down as far as literally followed and was able to identify the Nissan Murano SUV that they rented to put Frankie's body or Chewy's body out in the desert. They drove out in the desert, just with all their might, and I'm sure there was other people involved that they never gave up, but they pushed 600 pounds of concrete out into the desert. Weeks go by, and a homeless person who is out in the desert stumbles across this 600 pounds of concrete, and from where they laid the 2 layers, of course, the body started decomposing and draining, and that homeless person called Tucson Police Department, and that's how the whole thing got uncovered.
Wow.
You got to think, here's this homeless guy wandering around the desert, and he goes, I've seen a lot of shit out here, but this is the first time I've seen a horse trough with concrete in it. Because your first thought is, it's like when you see a turtle on a fence post, your first thought is, how did it get there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how did a horse trough with, just like whether he detected the body or not, just the mere fact a horse trough filled with concrete in the middle of the desert, that would have, that would have registered and triggered a call, I thought, in any event.
Yeah. Well, and it was pretty far out, I mean, and now, granted, I don't know if you guys have been to Tucson, but I mean, the desert can be, a mile away from downtown, right? I mean, it's just dry. I mean, they call it the desert. We're not talking the desert that people march through, getting into the country, so to speak. But I mean, that's what they call the desert out there. But anyway, so they, again, now I go back to sliding the pictures across. And, we're like, okay, well, we need to figure out how to identify to make sure this is Chewy's body, right? So where's the hands? Where's the head? Where's the feet? And we actually fly Juan Prieto, Walt Thrower, me, the AUSA at the time, who was just the greatest AUSA that I've ever worked with, a gal by the name of Jill Rose, who's just a rock star. And we fly out on the administrator's Learjet from DEA. They pick us up in Asheville. Me, Jill, Walt, and Juan Prieto, who's shackled up. And it's funny because Walt doesn't fly, and he had to take a Dramamine patch, and he was at Disney World for about 4 hours. But we land, we load up with DEA Tucson and Tucson PD, and Juan Prieto's like, I'll take you to the locations. Of course, they threw the feed over into some Indian reservation, and he took us. And I'm like, I'm not getting out looking for a set of feet in the briars, and there's coyotes, and I mean, it was gone. He took us to the culvert where he threw their hands. Well, it doesn't ever rain in Tucson, but it had been kind of a rainy season, and there wasn't no hands in there. And so then I'm thinking, you know what, this guy, there's an ulterior motive to him wanting to come to Tucson. We got something that's going on. And so his last ditch effort, he's like, I'll take you to where the head's at. And he takes us out into the middle of the desert. And I'm like, there's no way in hell this guy is going to tell us 5 months ago, where he buried a head. He literally walked us to the spot, and there was no cactus. There wasn't no big oak tree. There wasn't no cross. There was nothing. He took us directly to the spot, and they started digging, and we found Chewy's head encased in about 70 pounds of concrete. And what's funny is Jill Rose the U.S. attorney was marching around in the desert in a $150 pair of stiletto high heels that I'll never forget. But we found him. We found him and put some closure to that. Believe it or not, dealt with the family and talked with them, and they were very grateful. But anyways, once we found the head, they chipped it out, and we were able to make sure that was him. TPD did some search warrants at Frankie Castro's house, and we actually did an operation out in Tucson while we were there, and arrested Frankie Castro.
Man,
sweet. That's a good case.
Yeah. Frankie showed up in a car, a rental, and TPD SWAT team took him down. And it was really, again, I go back to, it very seldom rains there. And they say it never hails. We had one of the most hellacious hailstorms that day that I'd ever been a part of. And TPD SWAT team, they took him down in the middle of the hailstorm, and they knew he was violent, right? There's no doubt. He had his windows rolled down, and they tossed 2 flashbangs in the car with him.
Yeah, baby.
He came out, and he looked like so we arrested Frankie.
Speaking of having future hearing problems.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We finally got him back to Asheville, and a remarkable story with Frankie, and I actually looked him up this morning. He's due to get out of the BOP in 2034. But Frankie devised a plan and he nearly broke out of the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office jail, which was a multi-story, wasn't some hick town jail. It was a pretty secure location in downtown Asheville, multiple floors. But Frankie befriended a fellow inmate, and his new friend was released. And I got a call one day from, of course, a jail snitch that was over there that wanted to be a snitch. And he says, "Hey, got this guy who's talking about breaking out." I said, "Okay, well, who is it?" "Frankie Castro." And I'm like, "Holy cow, I'm the one that put Frankie in jail." Like, what is he doing? He says, "Well, he's befriended this guy, and the guy is now on the outside. He's helping him break out." So we go and track down the former inmate, and we interview him and like, "Hey man, you getting ready to go back in. What are you doing?" He says, "I've been helping Frankie smuggle in hacksaw blades." And I'm thinking to myself, what? He says, "Yeah, I've been helping him smuggle in hacksaw blades, and but I don't know what he's doing. I'm out, he's in." So finally, we're like, "Okay, we gotta put enough."
Oh, wait a minute!
So
this rocket scientist has no idea why somebody would want hacksaw blades on the inside.
Well, he doesn't know he doesn't know when or where or what he's doing, right? So he knows his plan is to get out. And so we finally like, all right, we got to go, and we call up Frankie's attorney, like, "Here we go. This, we got to come to an end of this." So we go and get Frankie out, and Frankie admits to us that Frankie worked in the laundry department at the Buncombe County Jail. And Frankie was pulling all the elastic out of the waistbands of every jail uniform that he could get his hands on, that he could get elastic. And Frankie tied hundreds of feet of elastic together.
One big bungee cord.
Mm-hmm. He cut a Coke bottle in half, and he got AA batteries from his Walkman. So that tells you about how long ago this was. His old batteries, he tied the elastic around his batteries, and he used the Coke bottle as a slingshot, and he shot the battery with the elastic cord tied to it out of a jail cell window that he would sneak up to at 3:00 in the morning, with the fact that he threatened the Buncombe County jail guard that he'd have him killed if he didn't allow him to do it, who has been arrested. Shoots this battery across the road onto the roof of an adjacent building. The ex-con ties together hacksaw blades, and Frankie reels them in, and he starts cutting bars. He had cut through 3 or 4 actual bars. Now, wow. I don't know what he was going to do once he got there, and got the bars off. But this jail guard knew he was doing it, but he was afraid that Frankie was going to kill him. And when we interviewed him, Frankie said his first stop was going to be by Matt Barden's house.
Oh, and just to say Merry Christmas.
Yeah. So that's kind of that's that caper in a nutshell. But as I told Stevie many years ago, that was even I could solve that murder, because the way we got on to Frankie was the fact that they didn't peel the skew off the horse trough, and it was still on the container. And we were able to track it back and pull video of him and Juan Prieto buying the horse trough in the concrete.
Well, I'm thinking even without the skew, but it's kind of like, okay, when's the last time you had somebody come through here buy a horse trough and 600 pounds of concrete? Mm-hmm. Oh, I know the guy. It's like those kind of things tend to stick out in your head.
Yeah.
That's just good. Yeah. That's good investigative work.
That is. And I keep going back to thinking of the guy who had his door cracked, the pilot, thinking, I got a lady coming up, and I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, pal, you're about to get screwed, just not the way you think you are." So let's.
Yeah. Cliff Cass we arrested a lot of people in that, and it was, it's one of those things that the win was putting a group of cops together. Even the fact that there was probably 6 or 8 of us, and the collaboration between multiple agencies and things like that. It was just really cool to piece that together. And so it was pretty interesting. and shows that the relationships and things like that you can build and across the agencies and to solve a pretty good caper. That was probably one of the biggest capers that's been worked in that area for a long time. But that kind of put our office on the map, and after that, the office really took off with just the resources and things like that we were able to do and generate from that. It was a cool caper.
Yeah,
Very cool.
So I guess when the defense attorney's asking, do you have anything concrete against my client? You can literally say, yes, we do.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. But, and I know we're probably running short on time. One of your guests early on was Lou Velozzi.
Episode 4.
When I was assigned, I'm sorry.
Episode 4. That was our first 2-part episode with Lou.
Yeah, with Lou. Lou and I used to work together in Savannah. Him, me, Randy Beach. And if you remember, you guys talked about, Lou mentioned his silver or gray Camaro that he had, that it was all souped up. And I remember a night we were on a caper, and it was a wiretap. And I drove a black 2-door Mach 5 Lincoln, baddest G ride I ever had. And but I got burnt on the surveillance, and so on this wiretap, and so I started borrowing Lou's Camaro to go out and do surveillance. And but Lou lived literally in a neighborhood behind where these violent coke dealers, gangbangers lived. So one night I'm in Lou's car on surveillance, and one of our guys gets literally burned out close to the house trying to get some overhears from the guy's house. And anyways, we called surveillance. I drove back through the neighborhood, parked Lou's car in his driveway, got in my Lincoln and pulled through, and they saw my Lincoln, and they started following me home. And another incident where their end result was going to be, they didn't know I was the police, but they were going to have their way with me.
Jeez. Man,
wonderful people.
Yeah.
And if people thought it was fun and games, right? It's not. What you got there, Murph?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'll give Lou a plug here. He's got his own TV show out now. It's Operation Undercover, Guns and Drugs in Carolina. So I think the second episode has come out. It's on Max. So give it a shot. He's the host of the show, and the reason that it rang a bell there, because when you mentioned Randy Beach, the first show is filmed in Pickens, South Carolina, and Randy's the chief there.
Randy's the police chief there. Yes, he is. So good. Lot of Randy and Lou and Matt stories from back then. So good people, good times.
Yeah, and and there's a lot of stuff we can talk about. But let's close out by talking about how your career ended for you, because you ended up as the special agent in charge out of Omaha. So that
is correct.
Apparently, honesty, your ability to express your opinions at least got you up the ladder to a special agent in charge. So you're now as we say, the HMFIC for that up there. So how long were you the SAC in Omaha before you decided to pull the pin?
So I went to Omaha in, August of maybe 2016, and I retired in September of 2018.
And then you decided to go to work for a little retail company, right?
I did. Yeah. I went to work and then currently work with Walmart in global investigations.
So how did you get get onto that kind of work? I mean, obviously, because here's the thing, a lot of times you retire at the special agent in charge, an SES level or something, you're directing all the other people, but a lot of times these positions it's almost like you're going back to being an investigator again, like you're out, working the streets. So what kind of role was that for you? So to go from, the special agent in charge now to this group, what kind of work did that involve and what were you doing?
So I run a team of 7 investigators that look at the diversion, the total diversion, really the opioid epidemic. And as we know it, and of course knew it many years ago, was pharmaceutical related. Walmart put together an external diversion team, and I was blessed enough to be selected for that position. And in that, I got a team of 7 investigators across the country. And the best part of it is there are 7 retired DEA special agents. And so, great opportunity, do a lot of great work. And I will tell you that, of course, you look at Walmart for being the retail giant and things like that. Global investigations at Walmart is a world-class operation. And I say that because we probably have 350 to 400 investigators at Walmart, and you guys have been career cops. You think about how many police departments out there have 350 or 400 people. I would tell you that probably not 90 or 95% of the police departments in our country don't have that many.
Here's a stat for you. I got the stat for you on that. Only 6% of the departments in the United States have 100 or more officers. 75% of all police departments have 25 or fewer people.
Yep, and we have a multitude of investigative teams. We work throughout all of the teams within global investigations at Walmart, work very closely with law enforcement. We work very closely with DEA, FBI on our team, Health and Human Services, just trying to do our part in combating just the horrible plight that we're in right now with the opioid epidemic. And so it is very beneficial. It still gives all of us a sense of responsibility and a sense of public service. And it's been a great segue, into, as you guys have interviewed so many others, you have to leave DEA at 57. I left at 54. And I never had any envision of myself doing anything but being a DEA agent forever, and then going and maybe being a police chief or a sheriff or something like that somewhere. But I knew when the opportunity for Walmart came about and what this mission was going to be about, and Walmart's willingness to inject themselves into this epidemic, into this problem, and put the resources and the manpower into it. And the fact that you get to go to work with 7 people every day that I've known throughout my career at DEA is really a blessing.
It's encouraging to hear Walmart making that commitment also.
Yeah, it's I will tell you, I've been around to a lot of DEA offices, a lot of the HIDAs around the country, a lot of state police organizations, a lot of the, pharmaceutical drug conferences and things like that. There's nobody out there that I think, and, I won't say, I'm sure there might be another organization or corporate, entity that has that type of footprint. I have not found them. And just the relationship that we have with law enforcement is truly just one of those things. You go to work every day and you realize that you have an opportunity to help out and maybe make things a little easier on investigators in a current investigation they might have. And so it's been really cool for the last 5 years.
Well, what I'd like to say is just because we retired does not mean that our oaths ever expired. And you're living up to that little corny saying that I've come up with right there, just because you're still trying to do things to help the public. And there's so many other stories. We could keep Matt on here for another hour talking different stories, funny things, and just coincidences and crossing each other's paths. But the fact that you're giving us your time right now when you could be spending with your family or at work, we can't thank you enough, brother, for coming on here. Love the story about Hooters. It brings back good memories.
Hey, I got one question though for you. With you said you work with a lot of different agencies. My understanding, and I actually have a copy of the official MOU that you have with the FBI. Line number 1 says the FBI does all press releases. Is that true?
Of course, of course.
I don't know. Not for me. Hey, I will say this, and I know we're over a little bit of time, but I will tell you one of the things that as you guys have learned, and Morgan, especially you, is that when you're going up through the ranks at DEA, you got to go and do your time in the barrel at DEA headquarters. And I got to give a plug, as much as it pains me, and it will pain you too, Morgan, of giving Stevie tell you what kind of human being I think he is. Steve and I met. We get kicked out of Hooters. We stay in touch. And I go back to the pictures that I saw of him on the desk at Group 10. I want to let you know I still haven't made that connection with Steve, even after I met him and we got kicked out of Hooters. I never made the connection when Steve's group we were working closely with his group in Atlanta. I never made the connection when Steve went to our special operations division. I didn't make the connection when Steve retired and I went to his retirement party. But I was assigned to Congressional and Public Affairs at DEA headquarters, and I got a call from Stevie one day, and he goes, "Hey, you're in Public Affairs. I've been gone from DEA for my 1 year now, and so now I can collaborate with DEA." And me and Javier are putting together, our story from Colombia has been picked up by Netflix, and I'm thinking to myself, is this Steve? What are you talking about? He goes, the Pablo Escobar story. And I said, I'm not following you, brother. I've been with DEA for 12 years, known Steve for 15 years by that time. I had no idea that the redneck from West Virginia was the guy in Colombia chasing Pablo Escobar until he called me and asked me if I would help him go to the DEA Academy and help train Boyd Holbrook and Pedro Pascal with Javier Pena. And Stevie included me in every aspect of that thing. I got to go and spend 3 days at the academy. The worst part of it is because we were within 50 miles, DEA wouldn't pay for me to get a hotel room, and so I had to bunk with Steve for 3 days.
Oh,
I wasn't going to tell anybody that.
Oh, there's got to be a story about that.
Yeah, and but I remember what a great experiance. And now
in the room, hold on in the room. Was it a king bed or 2 queens? We got to know this stuff.
I'll never tell.
We'll never tell on that one.
Don't ask, don't tell.
It was cheaper for a king, I think. But anyways, but just to remember back, Stevie, if you remember, with me and you, and Pedro had gone somewhere that evening, I think out with Javier, and me, you, and Boyd were smoking cigars and drinking bourbon out there at the hotel. And it was, of course, after Boyd got killed during the mock undercover deal there at the academy, where he literally jumped out of his clothes.
So that's coming up on our upcoming interview with Boyd. We say I set him up. I said, "Look, Boyd, you, me, and Steve. There's 3 things we all have in common. One is obviously Pablo Escobar, right? We've worked in and around DEA narcos, or we've all been trained by DEA." And I said, number 3, we've all been told never go in the house. And he had to think about it for a second.
It was truly one of the funnier things I've ever seen in my life. And but anyways, and I remember Boyd asking me, and I don't know, Stevie, if you'd gotten up and taken a phone call or what, but it seemed like Boyd and I were there, or maybe you were there. But anyways, Boyd says, Pedro and I haven't known each other very long, and we've been trying to decide, how we were going to play these characters on Narcos, because they just hadn't been in role very long, and they literally had met a couple of times, I guess, out in LA or wherever they were at, and they met. And they truly came up with the idea, if you remember, Steve, they thought they were just going to kind of play it like the Andy Griffith Show, right? They were going to play it. They knew Steve was a redneck from West Virginia, and they were going to be, these 2 guys. And the only thing that popped in their head was they were going to play it like Barney and Andy. But after their 3 days at the academy of undercover deals and out at the firing range and hand-to-hand combat and PT and going through the courses and things like that, they were like, this is truly legitimate. These guys go there, and I will tell you, second to none, and not because I was one, DEA Academy was the hardest damn thing, hardest academy I ever been through in my life as far as the physicality of it. I went in 33 years old. So I was the old guy, but it was funny how just 3 days there, these guys changed their whole persona, and I think they truly killed it. I think they really did a fantastic job. I would ask you guys if you when you talk to Boyd, tell him the underwear scenes in Justified. He needs to knock that off.
I haven't seen that, and I'm not sure that I want to now.
Go. He's in the new season with Timothy Olyphant and he's the bad guy, and he walks around in his tidy whities a great deal.
Hey, let me tell you, he is preparing to film. He may be doing it right now with Samuel L. Jackson in a movie, and I can't tell too much, but his preparation for the role he's playing, I'll just say he's on a hunger strike. He sent me a picture last week, skin and bones.
Really?
Unbelievable.
He did a really
the prep
good
he's
job
going through to for this role is just it's above and beyond.
He did a really good job in Justified. You should watch it before you talk to him.
Well, and the other thing too, just what you said there when we interviewed Boyd, and that's going to come out. That'll be after January 1st. I think it'll be January 8th. That when that episode comes out, it's our interview with Boyd. We actually get into talking with him about that. How much did this affect you? How much did it change your thought process? How much when you went into that house and you ended up getting killed? And it was like, I don't want to give it away, but exactly to your point, that's where I think the sea change happened in terms of how they wanted to play this. I think part of that goes back to when Boyd went in the house when he was told not to, and then they saw what the real world.
Scary.
Yeah,
I mean, because and to him, they truly got into role, right? But they had absolutely no earthly idea at the end of the day that agents go in and do that kind of thing. And if you don't follow the rules, what the end result can be. And I think it really resonated with him.
Here's something Murph didn't know, and he found out after he found out with Boyd. So you talk about Boyd getting into the role. You know what Boyd did every day to make sure he looked like Murph? He shaved so that he would have kind of a bald spot where the hairline was receding.
Receding hairline.
Yeah. He shaved every day.
Yeah, no, it was really cool to get to go and do that. But again, I close with this: the humility of Stevie. I never heard once from him. He never wore that accolade. He never was braggadocious. He never claimed to be anything more than a DEA agent, and he truly did that when he came from Greensboro. You'd have never known that guy, a year or two before, was on the biggest caper in the history of DEA and killed or was a part of the investigation that killed the most notorious gangster in the drug world. And it was truly a pleasure. I'm finally glad I figured it out, but I only figured it out after Steve told me and asked me to come and help. You would have never known. And he's lived his life that way, and been a lifelong mentor of mine. So I love you, brother.
Same
I
here,
truly
man.
do, and proud of you guys and you, Morgan. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I think what you guys are doing is really cool and kind of gets the stories out there that need to be told.
Excellent. Damn. That's the best send off we've ever got.
How much did that cost you, Murph?
Oh, well, I wasn't going to say anything.
$50 later.
By the way, in honor, we're recording this. This will be our final recording before Christmas, but I don't know if you can see my shirt.
Now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho, from
the greatest Christmas movie ever made.
Oh, I know it is. John McClane.
Yeah, and Hans Gruber. It's not Christmas until Hans Gruber falls off Nakatomi Plaza. So this is day 3. We're counting down. So I've got a couple of pictures showing Hans falling down the Nakatomi Plaza, and got to give big credit to Sergeant Al, man. Sergeant Al stopped a terrorist attack. So
there you go.
That's exactly right. Great movie, great Christmas movie, and we do watch that as a family.
That is a fan. I would have to say
it is a Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie. I'm telling you. Yeah. So hey, well, look. First of all, thank you for what you did. And look, great work with the Walmart. I've talked to. I had the chance to meet the CIO for the county where Walmart is located there, in Bentonville. So, and the things that they're doing to modernize that town, what they're not running. Walmart's not looking to run and go establish their headquarters, some fancy place. They are staying there. They've made a huge investment in the town. I'm just very proud of how they've continued to focus on the town, and keep their roots where it all started from. They're in Bentonville.
I will tell you, it's and again, not because I work there. I think you guys have probably seen through that already. I say what I feel, and it's a very impressive. And again, to put 400 people out there, and hey, granted, we're trying to figure out what's going on with the store, right? I mean, the stores or the company's job is to make money, and the collaboration with law enforcement, the things that I go and do, they send me to present at Narcotics Officers Association meetings. I had the opportunity to go to the Mid-Atlantic Great Lakes Fusion Center in Maryland a couple of months ago. The resources are absolutely tremendous, and they do what a lot of law enforcement agencies can't. And when I mean that, Steve, you'll know what I mean, and Morgan, probably you as well with Kansas State. It's tough to go and buy machined, Intel-based computer programs that you have to keep up with, right? Because one, they cost a lot of money, as we learned at DEA, Steve, right? And then you buy a contract, then the company goes out of business, and then you don't have anybody smart enough in your law enforcement agency to keep up with the thing. At Walmart, they put together the things that we give law enforcement. I've had U.S. attorneys literally send me letters saying I'd never in my imagination would have thought that Walmart could have helped us solve a caper. So it's pretty cool. The commitment is both feet in.
Commitment commitment to the community. You can't beat that.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty daggone
it's impressive.
Remarkable place.
Yep.
All right. Well, look, this is us saluting you, soldier. Thank you for a job well done. Merry Christmas, because like I said, this is the last thing we're recording. So Merry Christmas to both of you. Be safe out there. And last thing, real quickly, these days, where are you hanging your hat at there, Matt? What state are you in?
I'm in Northwest Arkansas, so I work out of the home office, and I've got I'm a new grandfather from 2 months ago for my oldest son, who has actually followed in my footsteps and is a DEA agent here in Arkansas.
Well, I'll tell you, that's why I was asking, because I can tell you right now, there's one thing that Walmart is not able to solve in Arkansas. It's Arkansas college football. So
yeah, we had to go there. And let me tell you, in the state of Arkansas, when there's no other sports teams and professional teams, a lot of effort goes into that, and it was pretty disappointing. Pretty disappointing season.
A good friend of mine is a former Arkansas State Police lawyer for the Justice Department. I watch him on Facebook. It's the team everybody loves to hate, but he's a diehard, Razorback fan. And you can call the Hogs. So have you learned to call the Hogs?
Oh, okay, yeah. It's a big to do around here on Saturdays.
Well,
and
you can take us out of this episode by calling the Hogs. Call the Hogs for us, Matt.
I can't do it.
Oh, come on.
I truly can't.
You can't or you won't. There's a difference.
No, I can't. I'm not a lifelong hog fan. So
okay, we're gonna have to work on that.
I can probably follow along, but I truly can't. I can't call them.
All right. Well, you will by the next episode. We have you on again. You're going to be ready for that. Okay. All right.
Morgan, it was a pleasure to meet you. It really was. And I started off with this. all the accolades I give Stevie, I feel your pain on a regular basis, brother.
Dude, bro, we got some talking to do after this episode is over.
You both are so
I got a lot more stories too, so.
You both are so fortunate.
We're going to go into the skiff with those stories and see which ones we can pull out. So you guys don't go anywhere. Everybody else, you guys hang on. Everybody else, stay tuned for the debrief. Concrete. How many? 600 pounds of concrete. I have dug shit out of yards, buried 600 pounds of concrete. Oh my God.
How? I still don't understand. Why did they think they needed that much concrete? Holy cow.
To stick it in the middle of the frickin' desert, where they were. It's kind of like, oh, well, nothing to see here. Just a big thing of concrete. Nobody will notice. That just blends right into the scenery.
Oh, well, maybe they were worried about some of the critters out there in the desert digging the body up. I don't know. But still, 600 pounds? That seems a little overboard.
And just it shows you that criminals aren't that bright. They go to all of that work. That it would have been easier to turn yourself in, go to court. You would have already been on probation instead of all the work you went to. Or parole, parole.
And through, good investigators doing their job, they were able to come up with all the evidence that sealed the case. So Matt is one hell of an investigator. He's got that. You can probably tell from his interview. He's a good old country boy, but he's just got that personality that you like the guy when you talk to him. Even if you're the bad guy and he's the good guy, he still has a very persuasive personality, a charismatic personality. So this is a blast having Matt on here, man. Thank you very much, brother. And
think about this too. Think about him and his team, what they're doing for Walmart globally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever in your life dream that in retirement from law enforcement or whatever position you have that you would work at Walmart? I thought I might be a greeter.
That's what I'm saying. Most guys retire. They're, hey, how you doing? Welcome to Walmart.
Matt, you impressed me, son. You done good.
Yeah, I bet they still make him greet people at the door, though, even at headquarters. Hey, Matt, come here.
He's a big boy. You won't miss him.
You won't miss him. Well, hey, guys, that brings, hopefully you guys like that. Just head on over to Apple, Spotify. Remember, you can leave comments on Spotify. But give us those 5 stars. Let us know what you think about it. It's magic. It's Disney. And if you listen to our Game of Crimes, you can't make this shit up. Maybe it's a small world, too. You just never know where you're going to find some of this stuff. You have to listen to the episode to find out why that's so funny. Yeah. Also, head on over to GameOfCrimesPodcast.com for more information about the show. That's where we'll put stuff. Our books. We've got a ton of books on there, too, that people on our that have been our guests have written. So you got to go check that out. Also, follow us on that thing they call social media on the interwebs at Game of Crimes on Twitter, now known as X. Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook. Game of Crimes Podcast on Instagram. Also, type in Game of Crimes fans on Facebook, and our favorite Mafia Queen, Sandy Salvato, who rules with an iron fist and the velvet glove, will let you and allow you entrance into the inner sanctum, where we have all sorts of classified, I should say. It's classified until you join, and then you get to participate in the fun. But until then, we can't tell you. If we tell you, we got to kill you.
There you go. It is a lot of fun, I got to say. Love those people.
And what else do we love? We love Patreon. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Like I said, if you want to find out what It's a Small World means, if you want to find out where not to hide your weapon if you're going to get arrested by the popo,
they're going to find it.
They're going to find it one way or the other. These are life lessons for people. If you're thinking about a life of crime, listen to us. We're going to put you on the straight and narrow. So just come join us at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. That's where you need to be. We've got 3 different levels, something to suit all tastes, all budgets, all families. Just come visit us. Game of Crimes over at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. So, guess what, Murph? It's time to bring this to an end. And guess how we bring this to an end?
How do we?
We're bringing it to an end by me saying to you, thank you once again for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all. The very heavy, if you're going to bury a body in 600 pounds of concrete, Game of Crimes.